Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
And this is Barbara. Lauren is not with us this month due to her taking some maternity leave with her new baby, and hopefully she'll be back with us next month. So it's just Michael and I.
Yep. Gonna be weird, actually. I think it's the first time doing it with just the two of us. So
it is the first time.
Yeah. So, gonna be different. This month, we read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. It was recommended by two different listeners on Instagram when we asked for recommendations a while back. As usual, we're splitting the podcast into two sections, a spoiler-free description and our overall score, and then a more in-depth discussion of the plot and the ending, which is obviously spoiler-heavy, and our individual scores for the book. First, let's talk about the author. So, when I was going through and looking at where I was going to, like what I'm going to write about Patrick Rothfuss, I found his bio on his website, and it was crazy long, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to use this whole thing, but it's pretty entertaining, so I decided to keep it.
Oh, really? This looks like a lot, looking at the notes.
It all began when Pat Rothfuss was born to a marvelous set of parents. Throughout his formative years, they encouraged him to do his best, gave him good advice, and were no doubt appropriately dismayed when he failed to live up to his full potential. In high school, Pat was something of a class clown. His hobbies included reading a novel or two a day and giving relationship advice to all his friends, despite the fact that he had never so much as kissed a girl. He also role-played and wrote terrible stories about elves. He was pretty much a geek. Most of Pat's adult life had been spent at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. In 1991, he started college in order to pursue a career in chemical engineering. Then he considered clinical psychology. In 1993, he quit pretending he knew what he wanted to do with his life, changed his major to undecided, and proceeded to study whatever amused him. He also began writing a book. For the next 7 years, Pat studied anthropology, philosophy, Eastern religion, history, alchemy, parapsychology, literature, and writing. He studied 6 different martial arts, practiced improv comedy, learned how to pick locks, and became a skilled lover of women. He also began writing a satirical advice column, which he continues to this day, called The College Survival Guide. Through all of this, he still continued working on this novel. In 2000, Pat went to grad school for English literature. Grad school sucked, and Pat hated it. However, Pat learned that he loved to teach. He left in 2002 with his master's degree, shaking the dust from his feet and vowing never to return. During this period of time, his novel was rejected by roughly every agent in the known universe. Now, Pat teaches half-time at his old school as an assistant sub-lecturer. He is underpaid, but generally left alone to do as he sees fit with his classes. He is an advisor for the college feminist, the fencing club, and, oddly enough, a sorority. He still role-plays occasionally, but now he does it in an extremely sophisticated, debonair way. Through a series of lucky breaks, he wound up with the best agent and editor imaginable, and the first book of his trilogy has been published, the one that we read, The Name of the Wind. Though it has only been out since April 2007, it's already been sold in 26 foreign countries and won several awards. Pat has been described as a rough, earthy iconoclast with a pipeline to the divine in everyone's subconscious. But honestly, the Pat person was pretty drunk at the time, so you might want to take it with a grain of salt. Now, Barbara, you want to tell us about some of the awards that the books won?
Sure. So, it was originally published on March 27th of 2007. It's considered a high fantasy, or just fantasy, or heroic fantasy, which is the first time I've heard of that subcategory, personally.
Same.
It is roughly 662 pages. It has a 4.5 out of 5 overall score on Goodreads and a 4.7 out of 5 overall score on Barnes & Nobles. It won the ALA Alex Award in 2008, the Quill Award for Science Fiction / Fantasy / Horror in 2007, and the Sakura Medal for High School Book in 2009. It also was nominated for the Locus Award for Best First Novel and Best Fantasy Novel in 2008, the Compton Crook Award in 2008, the Grand, and I'm going to butcher all this, so I apologize now, it's the Grand Prix de l'Imaginaire for Roman Étranger and Traduction in 2010, and the Premio Ignatus for Mejor Novela Extranjera, Best Foreign Novel in 2010, and the Tahiti Fantasia Award in 2011.
You did a pretty good job pronouncing that stuff. So now, normally when I'd ask Lauren to read the back of the book, but I guess I'm going to do that this time. So, I have stolen princesses back from sleeping Borrow kings.
For the record, this is the brief synopsis of the book, since Michael failed to mention that, but continue.
I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and ridden songs that make the minstrels weep. My name is Quoth. You may have heard of me. So begins the tale of Quoth, currently known as Coat, the unassuming innkeeper from his childhood in a troupe of traveling players, through his years spent as a near-feral orphan in a crime-riddled city, to his daringly brazen yet successful bid to enter a difficult and dangerous school of magic. In these pages you will come to know Quoth, the notorious magician, the accomplished thief, the masterful musician, the dragon slayer, the legend hunter, the lover, the thief, and the infamous assassin. In reading that again, I realized that the way that Pat wrote his biography on Goodreads is very similar to how he wrote the main character's description for this book. Anyway, moving on from there. So, what did you think, Barbara, of The Name of the Wind? Remember, no spoilers.
It was fine. I thought Quoth, the main character and pretty much the only character in the book, really, that gets much of a star shining in the book, is kind of full of himself, and you can tell by the way it's described right there. He's all of those things, but more. It's just, wasn't a huge fan of him, and that's kind of hard to swallow when he's literally the main character of the book. And it's not one of those I love to hate him. I just wasn't a fan of him, because I love to hate certain characters that I've read. And I love that too. So, not a fan of him. The world building was fine. I thought the world was really cool. The magic was probably the saving grace for this book, for me at least. I really thought it was very intriguing and really cool. And very different from other books that I've read with magic and stuff like that. Just like Magic for Liars, that one had a very different take on magic, and this one did as well. They call it synergy in this one, I believe, and not magic. And I thought the female characters were a bit lacking in this book, and I'm not going to get too much into that because of spoilers, but so yeah, it was fine. I wanted more, personally, but
fair enough.
This book written by a guy for guys, I feel like, personally.
Well, speaking as a guy, I really liked the book. I thought that the main character was really well written. Yes, he is absolutely full of himself, but that was just one part of his personality. I thought getting to see, a lot of times in fantasy books, you don't get a first-person story that you learn the main character's entire life. Like it's usually bounces around. Like Game of Thrones comes to mind, where each chapter is from a different character's perspective. And this was kind of neat that it was just, I mean, it's biased obviously, but it's just Quoth's story. And I thought it was neat to see where he came from, this great life he had as a kid to, like he talked about on the jacket cover, he talked about that he became like in the crime-riddled city, a feral orphan and all that. And I don't know, it was neat. I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was well written. The world building, I thought was, I'm going to describe it as effortless. Like I didn't, in some books you read about the world and you're just like, whoa, wow, like, oh my gosh. And this wasn't that kind of thing, but it also wasn't done poorly either. Like I thought he wrote it was very well described without being overly wordy. It felt like a very real world that he created.
He did a good job of just giving you just enough information for that scene to set the scene, and not just be like, here's 20 pages of world building that has nothing to do with anything, and you're not going to care about it, 2 chapters in later. Like, it was pertinent to that chapter and what was going on, and I appreciated that. Like you said, it was effortless. Like I wasn't screaming like, oh, I want more of this world, but I wasn't like, this is enough.
Right, you got just enough of the world, which I thought was...
Nice little taste. I'm curious to know more about it.
Same.
Since it's a series.
Right, yes, and we didn't mention that. This is the first of a planned trilogy. Books 1 and 2 are out. He has not released the 3rd book yet. But yeah, so I really liked the book. So, like normal, we're not going to go into our individual ratings right now. You'll have to wait for that. But our group score, is it really a group score? Our Barbara and I's average combined score is an 8 out of 10 for this one. Which, if you're any good at math, you probably already know our individual scores. But anyway, the next question we always ask in this part is, would you recommend this book? So, Barbara, would you recommend The Name of the Wind?
That's a hard one for the... I think I've recommended literally every single book. So, I mean, yes, I would recommend it, but I would be hard-pressed to name someone who would read it outside of my, cousin who he was one of the ones who recommended this book.
Yeah.
Or you, but obviously you read it, and maybe some of your friends. I can see quite a few of your friends enjoying this quite a bit. But as far as just, my friends, I really don't know if anyone would like this personally. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I also have a very eclectic taste in books, and most of my friends don't like reading what I like to read either, so maybe they surprise me, but I'm kind of leaning towards the no there. So I would recommend this, but maybe to other Instagram friends, or friends that don't know them personally or something like that, or just an overall, hey, this is a good book if you like high fantasy, and leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, I think that I would be doing a disservice to the book if I said no, I wouldn't recommend it, because I would. I would recommend the book. I thought it was really good, and for high fantasy, I thought it was easier to swallow than some. So even for people who aren't huge fans of fantasy, this wasn't that far off from real life that it would be out there for people. And
not yet,
and it may get there in the next book, who knows. But in this first book, it felt like a very real story about a very real, for the most part, a kid. He's pretty much a kid throughout the entire first book. Isn't he still a teenager at the end of it? He's 15, right?
He's still 15.
Yeah. So
spoilers.
Yeah, he ages. But yeah, I would recommend the book. Most of my friends are into this kind of stuff too, so that's an easy recommendation for me because they like fantasy books. But I think even people who aren't huge fantasy fans would like this. And my sister Lauren, who normally would be here, I think falls into that category. She likes fantasy, but not to the level that you and I do. And I think she might have liked this one.
I don't know. I don't think she would have.
You don't think so?
No. Because your sister likes, if she wants fantasy, she wants, shit in your face. She wants the action, she wants that. This didn't have...
No, yeah, it didn't. But, it's a good character-driven story.
Try not to spoil anything here, but this was a slow burn, and she does not like slow burn books. That's been her complaint with all the fantasy books that we've read. Yeah. She didn't think Darker Shade of Magic was... True. She thought it was a slow burn. I was like, what are you talking about? That book had more action than this did. Yes.
We may one day know if Lauren liked it or not. And if she does actually read it, I'm going to give her brief 30-second 2 cents in a future episode. Yeah. Because I did get Lauren a copy of the book. So she has the book. She has it.
She said she was going to try reading it during maternity.
During yes. Right. So we'll see. But yeah, so I would recommend the book. Barbara would recommend the book. And with caveats, right?
If one of my random girlfriends came up and was like, hey, there's a book, I wouldn't recommend this one to them personally. But if someone else is like, hey, have you read any good fantasy novels? I might include this in the list. I have a lot because I love to read and everything. So I would include this on the list. Hey, this is the type of fantasy you're looking for. Take this one versus do you want dragons? Don't read The Prior of the Orange Tree. Anyways, but...
Yeah, I'd say we recommend it then. If you're into fantasy, if you're not into fantasy, go for it. That was a really short first part of the podcast for us. We didn't have a lot. What's tricky about this book is...
it's 14 minutes. That's about average.
Is that about normal?
Yeah.
What's hard about this one, at least for me when we were talking about it now, is that because of the nature of the story, that it's a character-driven story. And even though, the description of the book talks about some of the stuff, I feel like you can't talk about a lot of it without spoiling the little surprises that pop up along the way.
No surprises.
Agree to disagree. So, for those of you leaving us now because you haven't read this book and you want to, don't forget to give us a review and a rating on iTunes if you do like it. Please, that really does help us a lot, helps us get noticed.
Tell friends, tell family members.
Yeah, share our stuff.
Tell people that you want to roast us. I'm fine with that. I'll roast you back.
And also follow us on Instagram if you don't already. And we're also on Facebook now. Both places our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a book you want us to read, let us know. We're still taking down recommendations. Oh, yeah. I think we've got like 6 or 7 months worth of episodes that we're out right now. So just so you know, if you recommend a book, it's not going to be like next month's podcast. But we want recommendations. We love reading you guys' recommendations. This was one of you guys' recommendations, and we both enjoyed it. So, saying that, let's give a short preview of our next episode. So next month we are reading Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is one of my picks. Head on over to our Instagram. I'm going to post some information there about the book. And if you want to buy it and read along with us or read it before the episode, you can grab a copy at anywhere that sells books or your local bookstore, wherever you get your stuff.
Help those indie places out. We need them.
Yeah. So here's a short little preview of the book. Here we go. Humanity has colonized the solar system, Mars, the moon, the asteroid belt, and beyond, but the stars are still out of our reach. Jim Holden is an XO of an ice miner making runs from the rings of Saturn to the mining stations of the belt, when he and his crew stumble upon a derelict ship, the Scopuli. They find themselves in possession of a secret they never wanted, a secret that someone is willing to kill for, and kill on a scale unfathomable to Jim and his crew. War is brewing in the system unless he can find out who left the ship and why. Detective Miller is looking for a girl. One girl in a system of billions, but her parents have money and money talks. When the trail leads him to the Scopuli and rebel sympathizer Holden, he realizes that this girl may be the key to everything. Holden and Miller must thread the needle between the Earth government, the outer planet revolutionaries, and secretive corporations. And the odds are against them. But out in the belt, the rules are different, and one small ship can change the fate of the universe. Dun dun dun.
Sounds interesting.
I'm excited for this one. I'm a big sci-fi fan.
So you picked it. So.
That'd
be a little embarrassing if you picked it and be like, I'm so not looking forward to that.
I'm excited about this one. I like sci-fi. Super excited for it. So that's coming up next month. Now remember, the second part of our podcast we're about to get into is going to be an in-depth look at The Name of the Wind. So if you do want to read it and you don't want stuff to get spoiled, stop listening right now and come back and listen to the second half when you're done.
And if you don't care, then just continue on listening.
Yeah, you do you. We're not here to tell you what to do.
Hi, this is Leah Stuhler, creator and host of YA Book Chat podcast. If you love reading young adult books and chatting about them with your friends, then head on over to my podcast and take a listen. Each episode, my guests and I chat about a different YA book. We start spoiler-free and then head into our spoiler section where we dive into the mysteries of each book. And we do it with laughs and fun along the way. You can listen to YA Book Chat on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcast. And now, back to the show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. First question for this month's book is this. This genre requires quite a lot of world building before a story can even start, and as the story goes along. Did you think that Rothfuss's world building was effective? Why or why not?
I say yes and no. I think we kind of briefly touched upon this earlier, but he didn't world dump all at once, which was nice. He just kind of made it flow throughout the story and whenever it made sense, which I can appreciate that because it flowed better in that sense, and it's not just like, oh my gosh, here's another, like I said, 20 pages of world building and okay, what am I supposed to do with this? He kind of sprinkled it in during the chapters whenever it was pertinent to that chapter. But I did think this kind of led to some pacing issues for me at certain parts of the story, and that made the story drag for me. Especially the part where what was the rabid orphan or whatever the hell he described himself. Like, that really, I feel like that was not necessary as far as world building for that town, if we're ever going to see that town again, or if there's any reason for that. And at certain other parts of the book, that was a little boring for me at times. But it wasn't too bad. I think I would actually prefer this method over the Priory method, where it was just like world vomit on you, and you're just like, okay, now, like, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, my brain is like trying to process way too much going on at once. So I prefer what he did, so I can't, get too mad about the pacing, because I thought he did a much better job than at the Priory Lady.
I thought Rothfuss did a fantastic job building a believable, lived-in, what felt like a real world. And kind of like what Barbara said, I think he did this by, instead of just dumping information about the world, where, like, you've got a whole, like, whole chapter, like 20 pages just about the world, he interweaved the world building into the story, which I thought was a more effective way of doing it. Because for me personally, when the authors are just dumping out world information, that tends to just kind of go in one ear and out the other. Whereas when it's interweaved this way, it's impossible to not remember those details, because, like, you have to remember the rest of the stuff to continue the story. And I really thought it was a clever way to do it, that I, like Barbara, prefer over the world dump that you get in some fantasy novels. So yeah, I thought I did a good job world building. Next up, did you find the plot predictable? Or did it keep you guessing about what would happen next?
Michael?
And I'll start first on this one. So it was predictable in the sense that, like, the jacket cover of the book is pretty much a Cliff's Notes of his story. Obviously, there's a lot more detail and some surprises, and things aren't quite as they seem in some areas, but it's predictable in that sense that you know what you're getting going into it. But there were definitely some unpredictable elements in the plot as well.
Really, do say. So,
like, if you just go with the jacket cover where he says he slayed a dragon, like, you find out he didn't actually slay a dragon. They ran into, like, a reptilian creature called the Dracus.
It was like a meth head dragon that wanted drugs.
The wanted drugs, yeah. So that was a pretty entertaining chapter, or a couple chapters, I guess.
It's fine, but, like, what was the point? There's no point of it.
Something that happened.
Okay.
And that's but the next point I wanted to make is that it's not a traditional story in the sense that it's not where, like, the traditional plot weaves and things like that. I mean, this is essentially a fictional autobiography that you're reading about this guy.
Yeah.
And I thought, knowing that that's what the story is, I thought he did a good job writing that.
I mean, I'm sorry, but people are boring. It's boring. People are boring. Your autobiography in this much detail can be boring. Like, no one wants to hear about how you slayed a dragon. First off, not a dragon. Second off, it was a mistake because he was meth-headed out.
So there were definitely some slow times. That was not one of them. I thought that was a pretty exciting couple chapters.
Sure, but if you're going to, like, egg on the Priory doing random action scenes or random stuff that had nothing to do with the overall subplot, this does the same thing.
It does, but the difference there is that was more of a traditional story, whereas this is literally like a guy telling his life story. Like, he's just telling you what happened to him.
Yeah, but not everyone needs you to go and digress into other stories and subplots that have nothing to do with anything. Sometimes you keep it nice, concise, and sweet and short, and there you go.
Fair enough.
I didn't think there was a plot, so what can you guess? No plot, no guessing. Can't really guess. I mean, I can guess the overall plot of the Chandrian, and obviously he's probably going to defeat them. I'm guessing, I told Michael this, I think that... So, the book takes place in... So, the book goes in third-person perspective when it's Coat, in its present time, and he's telling his story to the little dude...
The chronicler, he calls him.
Right, to write his little story down. And then the book goes into the majority, I'd say 90-ish, maybe even 95% of the book, is him retelling his life story. All 667 pages of the book of his life story.
It's definitely most of that.
And it's only part one of his story. And I'm don't remember what I was trying to say. But anyways, and that part of the story is told first person, obviously, so you only get his perspective of the world. So it's interesting how the book did that, and because of that, we don't really get anything resolved in this book. As far as what I'm seeing, the overall subplot seems to be, quote, parents got murdered by the Chandrian and he's trying to figure out why. That's why he wants to go to the university to learn, but also to learn who they are and how he can defeat them and what he can do to find them in the first place. Not necessarily to study. I think that's kind of a second interest for him, but he's being driven essentially to murder the people that murdered his parents, essentially. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
I would say at some level it does boil down to a revenge.
So like a revenge story.
That's his primary motivator of all of this, is he wants to learn more about the people that killed his parents.
Right. So I didn't really, what am I supposed to guess there? There's nothing to guess. I guess that he's only going to be able to murder these Chandrian probably in the present time. I don't think it's going to happen in the past. I think it's going to be after he tells his story, and then somehow he does something and he's going to go after them. That's what I'm predicting. That's the only thing I can predict, because everything else is, there's nothing else. Like, how can I predict your life story if it hasn't been
hasn't been told to you yet?
Like, I don't know. There's nothing hinting on it. There's not, like, except for the jacket. He's probably going to be what did he say? An undercover assassin at some point. Cool.
That would be exciting.
Awesome. But not much. No, it's just not there. Like, it's just... And another issue I had was Quoth would not leave much to the imagination, because he would kind of randomly state, like, oh, and I thought, like, Ambrose learned his lesson after he tried to one-up me and leave me alone, but then he tried to murder me. And it's like, okay, so he's going to try to attempt to murder you. Cool. You pretty much just told me what's going to happen. Like, instead of being surprised that he got attacked, no, we were told this. But guess what? That chapter where he almost gets murdered doesn't happen for another 10 chapters. So it's not like, oh, cool, I was looking forward to him getting murdered. Obviously he doesn't, because he's still alive and telling the story. But wait, there's more. Let me go on this other tangent about how I play the violin, and then we'll get to the murderous intent plot. And I know it's not a violin, it's
the lute.
It's a joke. So, not a fan of that, because there's nothing to predict, and I feel like the author thinks we're idiots, and I don't need to be fed the plot so much earlier like that. Like, give me a surprise, dude. Come on.
Next question. What is the point of the university? Are there any similarities or differences to Hogwarts? Because this book is frequently compared to the Harry Potter series.
But that's fine.
And lastly, would you want to study there? I'll let you take this one first.
Good point. I have no idea what the point of the university is. From what I can gather, there's no point of going to the university, as in, like, it's not mandatory. It's not a mandatory school, whereas in Harry Potter, I guess it's not mandatory. You don't have to send your children to Hogwarts, but it's, if you're magical, then you can send your kids to magical school, and I'd probably say 100%, unless Lord Voldy's around trying to murder your children, you're going to send your kids to whatever magical school that you live in. Obviously, Harry Potter was Hogwarts, but she's opened up the world of that. Digress. But this one doesn't seem to be any point for that. Like, you don't need to go to this school to get a career after this. Plenty of people have careers outside of going to the university that I've seen in the story so far, so I'm not really sure, unless you just want extra knowledge and you're rich, because it seems like you only get to go if you're rich. So, okay, that pretty much takes out, 90% of the people that live in this populace. Most people seem to be normal people who own inns and go to inns and that kind of stuff. So
middle class.
Don't really
working class, I guess.
Yeah, the working class don't really need to go to the university. I don't think it has any similarities to Hogwarts besides being a magical school. Outside of that, there's no years, there's no semblance of a structure for, like, your first year, second year, third year. It's a weird ranking system, and it's pretty much if you prove your worth, then you get to move up. And so far we've heard of 3 rankings. Like, you got into the school, and then the second ranking, which he stays up in pretty much in the most of this book, and then the third ranking, he gets promoted to at the very end of the book. And I'm going to assume we're going to learn more of how he's doing with that in the second book. So I'm not really sure what else is going on with that. And as far as what I want to study there, I mean, any magical school is better than normal school. So yeah, put me in any medical school, I guess, at this point. Like, I'll go to anyone besides normal school. I don't have to learn math.
So for me, I think the point of the university was, like any university, I guess, that if you're a sympathy user, which is what the magic system is called in this book, or you're sensitive to magic or whatever, then you would want to go there to learn more about how to use that and how to use your power.
But I feel like this one anyone can use. It's not just certain people. Anyone can do synergy work.
Anybody can go to this university if they have the money, but not all of them can do that. I don't think all of them, because there's some students, like there's that one student that's been at the same
yeah, but
apprentice
it seems
level
like he
for
just
like 30
likes to
years.
learn. I mean, there's people that do that here too, that literally go to school for 10 years because they like to learn or they're pretty hard.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I think the point of it is. And for the main character, the point of it, I think, initially going there is he's curious because he learns about himself that he can do this magic, and because of, what was that guy's name?
Ben was his nickname.
Abenforth, I think, or something was his real name. But Ben
Aberforth, but
taught him some stuff on the road when he was a kid, and he learned that he had the ability to do this stuff. And I think initially, like, if life had gone the way that he thought it was going to, and his parents wouldn't have gotten murdered and all that stuff, then he probably would have eventually ended up at university just because he wanted to learn more. I think part of his inspiration, though, because of what happened, was going to university to have access to the archives, which is, the largest library known to man in this world. And the irony there is that he gets banned from the archives like after one visit or two visits, something like that at the beginning. As far as the comparison between this and Harry Potter, I know Barbara is not agreeing, but I actually found kind of a fun chart that I want to go over with comparisons.
Oh boy.
So in The Name of the Wind, Kvothe discovers magical talents as a child, as does Harry.
Okay.
In The Name of the Wind, his parents are killed by Haliax or Lanry, the head guy of the Chandrian. In Harry Potter, his parents are killed by Voldemort.
I do compare them to Voldemort later on.
The Chandrian in this book, the Death Eaters in Harry Potter. He attends university to escape Harbin. Harry attends Hogwarts to escape the Dursleys. The Underthing is similar to the Chamber of Secrets.
Is it, though?
Ori, which is the girl he meets that lives in, like, the Underthing. Moaning Myrtle is the comparable.
Okay, now we're just...
Ambrose is Draco.
Not even close.
Willem and Simon, Ron and Hermione.
Nope, not even close.
Fila, Cho Chang.
Nope, not even close.
Master Ham, Professor Snape.
That's the only one I'll give you.
Kvothe sneaking into the Arcanum before he has permission is similar to Harry sneaking into the restricted section at the library.
No.
And then this book has eccentric masters, and Harry Potter had eccentric professors.
Okay. So. Really pulling at straws here. Or
definitely some similarities there.
No, not definitely.
She's not going to agree because that's like her favorite book of all time.
I'm pretty sure if Lauren was here, she would be on my side. This is why I need your sister here.
Lauren's not here, and so those are my points as to why
they're wrong.
It's similar.
That's fine.
It's my opinion. My opinion cannot be wrong.
Sure, it can be wrong in my eyes.
As far as whether or not I'd like to attend it, yeah, duh. I mean, we could read any book and there was a magic school, like, I'm going to say, yes, I want to attend it. Like, I'll let my nerd flag fly. Whenever I play like, role-playing video games, I always play as the magic user. Of course I want to go to a magic school. Next question. Who is your favorite character in the book?
No one. I don't have a favorite characters because there's not any good characters. Because the only character we get is Kvothe, and he's not that great of a character. I've already mentioned that. So,
who is your least favorite character?
Once again, don't have a least favorite character because there's not that many characters to begin with. Like, I love to hate Draco Malfoy. Why? Because he's a prick and you understand it a little moving on and he does all these stuff and you get the background. Why do we hate Ambrose? Because he hates Kvothe and Kvothe hates him. It's his point of view and that's why we hate him. We don't know. He could be kind of a douche nugget. It seems like kind of a douche nugget because of the two instances that he was a douche nugget. But that's all I'm getting. Maybe he's a great guy. I don't know. I don't know his life story. So, I don't have any favorite characters. There's just not that many characters. Quoth's friends are barely in it. Like, he's like, oh, and then we became friends. Okay, cool. Nice story, bro.
I liked his friends.
Like, they're just kind of there. You don't get too much of his friends. He even mentions and says, I don't hang out with my friends that much. Hey, you know what? I think I found my favorite character. It's the loot. The loot that gets broken. That's my favorite character. We get more about the effing loot than we do about his friends. That's how much detail of the loot we get besides his friends.
So, my favorite character was...
It's Quoth, because that's the only one that is.
That's true. He is my favorite character, and my least favorite is Ambrose because
that's the whole he wants you to hate. That's the only other person there except for the Chandrian, but you don't get much of them either.
May I answer, Michael?
No.
My own question. Ambrose is my least favorite character because of actually that's really not even fair to call him my least favorite character. My most hated character because of the way he acts and his pretentious, rich, daddy's money self. My least favorite character actually. Man, I don't know. That's
because there's no one there. That's exactly. You can't even hate the Chandrian because they seem kind of cool. Like, I want to know more about them. I don't hate them. Sorry, Quoth.
I don't know who my least favorite character would be.
Because there's no one to hate.
What were the roles of women in the book and in the world, and were those women well-written characters? So, I know what Barbara's response is going to be here, and it's not going to be a very nice one, so just be buckled in for that. The women in the story were few and far between. And the characters, the women characters or female characters that were there, they just kind of were, they seemed to just kind of be like a beautiful romantic interest or distraction for the main character. Like, Fella is one of his classmates that is described as like absolutely like drop dead gorgeous, and he gets an opportunity.
All the females are described as gorgeous people,
except the weird girl who lives under the sea. But
yeah.
Anyway, Fella was described as like this gorgeous woman that is clearly interested in him, but he's maybe not interested in her.
He's only got eyes.
She pretty much is introduced because he needs a damsel in distress to save at one point, and that's actually how they become closer friends. So, I mean, the only female character that I liked that I thought was better written than the others, which isn't saying that it was well written by any means, but better written than the others, was Denna. Which Denna is his
love interest,
childhood friend / love interest. He meets her for the first time.
Still at the same age. There's no such thing as a childhood friend because he met her at 15.
He's a child throughout the whole book.
Right, but so childhood friend for now that we know of, because he meets her at 15 and they still hang out at 15. The book still stays with him at 15. Anyway,
keep getting interrupted today. I can't get a word in edgewise.
Nope.
So I liked Denna because just the way her character was written, she was kind of. I mean, yes, she was like a beautiful girl and all that stuff again, but she was also like her characteristics and her personality were interesting as well. Like she was written as kind of aloof, like she was mysterious and he didn't really understand why she did what she did, and she would just pop up at random places. It was very difficult for him to ever find her if he was looking for her. And I also think that something kind of just below the surface on her character is that we don't know exactly why, is that she's broken. Like something clearly happened to her in the past that she doesn't want to talk about, that has kind of made her the way that she is, and that she doesn't stay in one place for long and is kind of a roamer. But yeah, no, I guess that's my answer to that question. What about you? Again, folks, get ready.
No, and no. Just no all around. The author doesn't seem to know how to write females. He seemed to just throw them in because he needed them to be there. Like, he needed a love interest, and so he, wanted a love interest in there, so throw it on. And for the record, you don't. Like, if you don't want to have women in your book, like, don't have them. Not that big of a deal. But if you're going to have them, at least make them somewhat convincing or fun to read. Just don't put there just to have a pretty eye for Quoth to look at. And he pretty much mentions all of them are beautiful, and somehow they all seem to be attracted to him. Don't know why. He's not that attractive, and he's 15. Everyone else is at least 18, I feel like, in the books. I think even Denna is a year or two older than him that he mentions. So, not quite sure why anyone would be throwing themselves at a 15-year-old. Kind of creepy, personally, if you're 18. So, that whole, like Michael mentioned, Fella? Is that her name?
Fella, yeah.
Seems to be interested in him, but it's like, okay, as an 18-year-old, why would I be interested in a 15-year-old when I got plenty of other men who are actually men and not boys to be interested in? But, okay. And they just kind of seem to be thrown in there for plot reasons. Like, Fella was in there for Quoth to rescue her when he pretty much was the one who effed her over to begin with because of the whole, oopsies, I dropped this really weird alchemical substance on the floor that's going to burn everybody. We might as well save her ass over here. So, okay. The only mildly interesting person I thought was Devi. I want to know more about her character because she seems kind of like a badass, you know?
The loan shark?
The loan shark, yes. She's described as small and pixie-like, so I'm curious to know more about her. Of course, Quoth also thinks she's beautiful in her own way. Okay, cool. I mean, I guess Quoth is a nice guy and thinks every woman is beautiful, so that's kind of a nice fresh breath air there. Most guys are like, ooh, for anyone or something like that, but pretty sure the author is probably going to ruin her character in the next book, so I guess we'll wait and see.
Fair enough. That was actually less scathing than I thought it would be. So, Patrick, if you're listening, just know I thought it was going to be a lot worse than that.
I just don't think he knows how to write women, personally.
Next question is, what did you think of the magic system in the book called Sympathy?
This was the book's saving grace for me. I thought he did a very good job with this. It was really cool. I feel like I always say this, like, I've never read a book that had this kind of magic, but it's true. This is a very different take on magic. It kind of seemed like it was somewhat based on like math and actual stuff that if you could do if you wanted, and if magic was real in our world, or alchemy based on actual like stuff that we know about. Like, hey, for you to move this, you need to tie it to this, and you can think about this. And obviously it's more intricate than that, and like you have to split your mind, and you have to think about rocks in one part of your brain and lighting fires in another one.
That part was cool. The whole like you have to like split your brain.
Yeah, like that's really
like literally
cool.
Split your brain.
Very cool. I think that's very interesting how he did that. I want to know more. I want to have more. Like, what else can we do with sympathy? Like, I know we can light fires. I know we can move rocks with another rock. Like, I want to know what more can we do with this. I think it's cool that you need a conductor. Like, you can't just be like, magic, oh, there's floating things in the air, or like, oh, I just created something out of nothing. Like, no, not in this world. Like, you have to pull it from something. And like one scene in the book, like they're trying to light a candle and they use their own body heat, and then it goes into like why that's dangerous, because obviously your body needs to maintain an average body temperature, and if you dip down below that, like, you can pretty much hypothermia your ass and die. And I thought that was really cool. Very interesting. I want more of it. I feel like there was not enough. I feel like it was just a tiny bit of the book. There was more looting about the stupid lute, or whatever the magical instrument that he uses.
He plays the lute.
Instead of the actual magic.
So I thought the magic system was really cool. It was really well done. It was really well written. It was very detailed. I also liked what Barbara was talking about, that like, you didn't just cast magic and you didn't have like a mana pool that you were draining from.
Wow, mana pool, really? Nerd.
I know. You actually like you had to sacrifice something to create.
You don't have
something.
MP.
Shut up. See, something has to be destroyed for you to create something else. I thought that was really cool. The other thing that was cool is that there's like almost different schools of magic, kind of. Or maybe all different ways you can use the same magic. I'm not sure exactly. I'm hoping there'll be some more detail on that in the next book. But
yeah.
There's a Barbara was talking about where like he was using the sympathy to create like heat or to light a candle or something like that. And then his specialization at the university involves like alchemy and welding and building things out of like earth metals, and that's a whole different kind of magic that I thought was really cool. And then there's also, you get a little taste of what the book is actually talking about, like the title of the book, which with the naming, where like if you know the name of something, like names have power, is what Eladin tells him at one point.
You can use the elements, it seems like, or name of everything.
Maybe
it's one of those.
We
things.
haven't gotten a whole lot on that. Like the only time it's been used is twice. Once when he was a boy, he was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and he tried to use the name of the wind that he read in a book and almost killed himself. Ben had to save him. And then later on, he accidentally used the name of the wind as an adult.
No, not an adult.
Sorry, as a 15-year-old. And seriously injured one of the other students.
Not seriously. Ambrose was just fine.
Yeah. Well, he broke his arm. But And now we know at the end of the book, you get a taste of like that. After that happened, then Eladin, who's the expert at naming, took him under his wing and is going to teach him more about this skill.
It's
and
like the Dumbledore, right, Michael? If we're gonna...
No, I think the Dumbledore of the book is the Chancellor, and the only reason I say that is that there was the scene when, like, so they have, after he hurts Ambrose by accidentally using the name of the wind, Ambrose accuses him of malfeasance and has to appear before
Not the first time
the
he's been
council.
accused or gone to the council.
And if proven guilty that he was guilty of malfeasance, he gets lashings and mandatory expulsion. And the moment I thought that the Chancellor was like Dumbledore, is like he gets expelled, and then like the author even says like the Chancellor like had like a little like evil grin, and before calling another vote that suspended his expulsion.
That was Eladin that had that.
No, that was the Chancellor who started that. Anyway, that was my Dumbledore.
I'm talking about the
comparison.
evil glint to the eye. That was Eladin.
Oh, both of them I think did, but
no, you're misremembering.
anyway, I like the magic system. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that there's more about it later on. Next question after that, and this is going to be a big spoiler, so if you're still here, what are you doing?
Because there's nothing else to spoil. Have you noticed that? There's nothing to spoil, Wild, because there's no plot. Nothing to spoil.
So we learn near the end of the book, there's the interludes that Barbara was talking about, where it goes to like present day, where he's telling the story, and this is the longest of those interludes, where somebody comes into his inn, to the tavern part of his inn, and is being violent, and
such a nice way of saying it.
You see him Quoth, trying to cast sympathy to stop him, and he can't do it. And all we really know is that he couldn't do it. And then Bast, his satyr friend, tells the chronicler, like, hey, do not ask him about that. Like, that's an off-limits topic. Don't bring up that you saw that he couldn't do that. And so the question that I'm going to ask now is, what do you think is wrong with Coat? Like,
you know, I don't know, because there's nothing in the book to give you that information, because we're not quite there yet. I'm sure we'll find out by the third book what's wrong with
I think
him.
that's probably true. He didn't really give a whole lot as to... I thought it was an interesting little piece of information, or like a breadcrumb that he gave you, though. Like, is that not a little bit curious? Like, why can this kid who's very skilled at using this, all like now that he's older, he can't use it? Like, what happened?
Probably because he stopped believing he was so great at everything, and he realized he wasn't, and his little head just shrunk down, and now he knows that he's not that great.
She actually wrote that in her notes. All of that.
Just
followed
kidding.
by just kidding.
Just kidding. But really, he is very self-centered and full of himself and his abilities, and he thinks he's amazing at life. And
yeah, I'm guessing something bad's going to happen to him, though, and that's why he... Either that, or it's going to be
the believing story.
Like, it'll be like a mental block. He stops believing in himself.
That's what I'm saying.
Could be that, too.
It's going to be that. It's going to be a mental block, and he thinks he's useless because he's not around people who can, blow his little head up for him there. So,
following up to that, who are the Chandrian?
The Lord Voldemorts of the story.
The Death Eaters.
And then Lord Voldemort with the High Ruler, Voldy, as King Dingaling. This is the big baddies with a capital B.
Keep going.
I mean, that's who they are. We don't get too much. We get 2 instances of them mentioning who they could potentially be. That's pretty much all we get, and one of those is the only interesting part of this whole, I would say 30% of the beginning novel, when he's a creepy little orphan kid. And we get this kind of side story about this character and who he might be. And I think he's finding roadblocks because they obviously go around and murder everyone who knows anything about them. Like, obviously his parents were murdered because Daddy was singing or making up a song and trying to collect information about them, and they did not like that. And same goes with the wedding party, that everyone got mass murdered as well because they found something they didn't want them finding. So that's probably why there's nothing about them, because they're getting rid of any information about them.
Yep.
But why? I don't know. Nefarious planning, perhaps? Who knows? We didn't get to learn anything about it in this book.
I think that Patrick did a really good job with the Chandrian, because you learn enough, but not enough at the same time.
I don't think that's a good enough job. He needed to give me more.
Can I finish my thought?
No, he needed to give me more.
You keep interrupting me today.
You interrupted me too, because I want to say that I'm hoping there's a cool girl baddie in there, because that would be pretty cool to have a cool girl baddie. Maybe he can write bad girls better, and it would be really neat to see killing people.
So I thought he wrote the Chandrian well, because I think that he gives you enough information to be curious about them and recognize that they're the villain, but you don't really know who they are aside from their leader, which we only kind of have an idea of who he might be. And then I think that it's written that way because obviously we're hearing, Kvoth's life story, and he's having trouble finding information about them because, like Barbara said, these guys, like, if anybody knows stuff about them, they go around and they silence them. Whether that means they have to kill somebody, then they do that. Or if they have to, burn some books or art or whatever it might be, then they do that. And, I think that he has gotten very limited time in the archives, but I think he's going to find that there's not going to be a lot of information in there on them just because of the nature of them. Like, they clearly, they don't want to be written about. They don't want people to know who they are. But I think there's definitely going to be a big confrontation with them at some point, just because I don't think
it's going to take place present time, though.
You think so?
I don't think it's happened in his lifespan yet.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Another thing is we think they're the baddie just because they're baddie to Kvothe. They haven't really done anything else outside of mass murder people that we're not aware of.
I mean, they killed his parents and his whole troop when he was a kid. That's
right, but to him that sucks. I mean, to me,
that
who's
probably
in
sucks to anybody who knows
some
those
weird
people.
town over has no idea who they are, so why does that bother me?
But the troop that his parents were leaders of was world famous. They said people like kings and stuff got excited when they came around. So I'm sure people felt that.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not trying to discredit. It's just to Kvothe, they're the ultimate evil.
Yeah, because they killed his family.
Right.
Yeah, true.
To other people, we don't. I'm assuming. I'm not sure. We don't know enough about them. Are they world dominant? Are they trying to take over the world? Doesn't seem like it. Looks like they're just hanging out, making weird little wisps all over the place, and just leaving. She's in a mood today. This is kind of a different question for us, but if you could talk to Patrick Rothfuss and ask him one question, what would you ask him? So I'm going to go first on this one. I would ask him about his writing process, like how he comes up with these characters and what's going to happen to them. And the fan question is like, when's the new book coming out? Because it's been a long time. Every author's
9 years.
Favorite question.
9 years since the last one came out. So I'd ask that as well. Barbara?
Why he sucks so bad at writing female characters.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, I'm curious to know why he picked the two different viewpoints. I've never seen that done. I don't think. I'm trying to think. I've read quite a few books, not a nice amount.
Two different viewpoints, you mean like first and third person?
Yeah, like he uses the first person viewpoint and then the third person viewpoint, and I find that very interesting. I think he does a better job of writing first person personally than he did third person. I was more engaged on that. But in the third person, I wanted to know more about those characters. At least Bast, like why is he there? What's he doing? Why is he a pan from, Pan's
a satyr, you mean?
A satyr. Like, why is he a pan-like? And who is he and what is he to Kvothe and stuff like that? But I think that's very interesting. I've never even considered that being an option, switching that type of perspective. Either most authors do third, especially if they have a lot of different characters, or first person, and it's just that person. So I liked it. I don't dislike it. I thought it was an interesting way to tell the story. So I'm curious to know why he did that and why he chose that instead of just having it in first person. I would have assumed it would just all be in first person.
And then just have a time jump back and forth.
Yeah. But
that is kind of different.
I think what I'm thinking is he doesn't want you to know what's going on with Kvothe, and if he had a first person of the present day, you would get more of what's going on with his character and what happened, because you'd have to. It's a biased thing. You'd get his feelings on what is going on.
So have it being third person in the present, it's almost like you're a fly on the wall listening to him tell a story as opposed to knowing the story.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
So, see, I had a nice question to ask him.
You did actually. Next question. What are your thoughts on music and its role in this book? So, music, I mean, it plays a huge role in Kvoth's life. I mean, he grew up as a trooper, which means that he's a very talented and skilled musician. His parents were very talented and skilled musicians. I think it's it's framing that in that sense, but it lets you know, in some ways, I think, why he is such a good storyteller, because as a trooper, you kind of have to be to entertain your audience, and so that's one part of it. It also explains how this poor boy who has no money is able to get money, because he plays at different ends and is paid pretty well, actually, for...
No, because he's still a little pauper at the end of the book, so I wouldn't say pretty well.
Well,
whatsoever.
He was until Ambrose screwed him out of that. He was playing at that classy inn for a while where he was getting paid really well, and then Ambrose screwed him out of it. Anyway.
Yeah. Ambrose screwed him of getting a sponsor, essentially,
Yes.
to sponsor and give him where he would get loads of money, and that backfired on him,
But I thought I thought the music was really cool, and it's an interesting part of the story, and you can tell, like, his connection to it is really, really deep, too, just because of his upbringing, I think. And then there's also, the fact that his dad and his parents were essentially killed because of music. His dad wrote a song about the Chandrian that he didn't even get to perform for anybody. They found out about it. God knows how they found out about it. And they just kind of freaking murdered everybody like that.
No, kind of. It happened.
What about you?
I'm not sure if the music will have a purpose in the I want to murder the Chandrian subplot going on there, or if it's just another subplot to show how Kvothe is just good at everything, because he's literally good at everything. Like, he even mentions it multiple times, just in case you, the reader, doesn't know that he's good at everything. Guess what? He is. So, obviously, it is a huge part of his life, since, that's what his dad was known for, and he even kind of is proud telling the story of how his dad was, like, an amazing lute player, and could do all these, like, amazing stuff. And his mom had, like, a beautiful voice, and both his dad singing together was cool and all that. So, that's cool. The music is fine, but I'm just not really sure how it'll tie into anything besides how, he'll get the monies and the girls with the little lute playing subplot there, because overall I haven't found the connection. Maybe in the second book we'll see if it's a connection somehow. Maybe it's the way you can defeat the Chandrian by singing them, barding to death. How's that for nerd reference?
One way to defeat them would be like... I guess with music is if he sings his dad's song.
Dance-off.
Sings his dad's song and tells the world about them. I feel like that's the Chandrian's like biggest nightmares for people to know who they are. So that could be something. All right, last question. Do you want to read the next book in the series, The Wise Man's Fear? You can go first this time.
Kind of on the fence for this one. I want to know what happens, since we didn't get a complete story whatsoever, and I'm a very curious person by nature, so I want to know about more of the Chandrian, and I want to know more about the magic. But I was a bit bored reading this book at times, especially with Kvothe. Like, I really don't care that much about his subplots and digressing to other crap and that jazz. Like, just stick to the point, man. Like, let's get the Chandrian. Let's get him. So I want to know about that. So I'm hoping maybe the next book would have more action, or maybe better characters and more characters that actually stick around and have better characterization to pique my interest to want to read this. But, like, if I do pick this up, the second book, I might just skim it just to get to the points that I want, because I feel like this is just a lot of fluff, and it was fine, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, oh, cool, I want to read more. Like, the only times I wanted to read more was like, oh, are we getting more about the Chandrian? No? Okay. So we're going to learn about his lute again? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Oh, there's Deno chasing her? Oh, okay, I guess you can chase her. Oh, cool, dragon scene. That was a cool scene. Oh, well, it's over.
So my answer on this one's a little bit different than Barbara's. Yes, I'm really excited to figure out where the story goes and to read the next book. But I'm a little apprehensive, not because I don't want to read it, but because I kind of want to wait until the last book comes out, so I know that we can actually get the rest of the story as opposed to just reading the second one and then having to wait longer.
If he dies or something, God forbid, and you never know about the Chandrian, I'm going to be so effing pissed.
So if you want to laugh, Barbara's answer when I asked her this question before we did the podcast was that she would read it if I bought it for her.
Yes, I'm not wasting money on this one. Sorry.
So she will be reading it because I'm going to buy it. So
I've never not finished a book or a series, except for one.
there you go.
So
this won't be number 2 then.
I want to know what's going on, but I feel like if I did read this and it's more of the same, I can definitely see myself just skipping scenes just because I don't really care about how awesome Quoth is. Because this is just, it should have been retitled, Quoth, the Awesome Person. He does everything better than you can.
Magnificent Quoth.
The autobiography. Yes.
So, as we wrap this up, obviously we need to tell our individual scores. Which again, if you did the math, you probably already know the answer to that. But so my score for this one, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I really liked it. And I didn't see how I could give it any lower of a score than I gave Elantris or A Darker Shade of Magic.
Lauren gave it a no.
Yeah. I did. In the notes, I put a no out of 10 because Lauren didn't read it.
Said no. No.
All caps, no.
So I'm sure people are probably going to be surprised at my score. I gave it a 7. I meant more like my ranting.
I know, it's higher than you thought it was going to be. Right.
I'm sure most people thought I would have given a much lower score. He wrote it well. I don't have any complaints about the way he wrote. It's easy to read. It's not one of those, sometimes I feel like high fantasy books just make up too much. There's too many fake words or too many fake things going on that you have to keep in mind when reading the book. And it takes a while to pick up and be interested and invested in these high fantasy novels. And you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, what is this? Who is this? And he does a good job of kind of maintaining like a realism to it. Like, this could happen anywhere. Here's a little bit of magic. Here's a little bit of crazy Chandrian murderingness. Here's a little bit of this magic person that turned into an awful human. Here's a cool magic school. So I think he does that well enough to keep me reading, but I feel like I just wanted more. And I think that's why I was disappointed. And also the fact that it got such a high score from a lot of people. I think maybe my expectations for the book were maybe too high. If you ever have those, like, if someone recommends something, they're like, oh, it's amazing, and you read it and you're like, ooh, okay, not exactly what I was imagining or picking up on. So I think that kind of fell for me. And then just the lack of any decent female character. Like, yes, I am a female. I'm sorry, I want to read about females. Or at least some, like, give me one person I can latch onto and be like, go girl. You know, just one. That's why I'm hoping there's a baddie girl in there. She murders people and she's great at her job and she's the best one. I mean, like, give me that.
Denna might step up in the next book.
I feel like Denna is just there for him. Like, she's pretty much Quoth, but a female version. Like, she's great at everything. She has a beautiful voice. She has beautiful, long, lustrous, dark raven hair. And dark brown eyes. Hey, you know, I can get down that. Normally, females are always, like, blue-eyed or green-eyed. Brown eyes.
You just described yourself.
Oh, well, wouldn't go that far. So, like, okay, cool. But I just kind of feel like she's just there as his love interest. And, you know, I'm hoping maybe in the second book we'll get more. And she's going to be, like, this mysterious, cool, badass person. And not just there for him, for his sake.
Fair enough.
But, yeah, we'll see.
So because of that...
7. I don't know if I said that yet.
You did, yeah. Okay. Because of that, the badass official score for this one is 8 out of 10. So yeah, that was The Name of the Wind. Thank you so much for listening. We are Badass Literature Society. Hopefully you liked the episode. If you did, please let us know. Leave us a review on iTunes or any of the other places where you're listening to podcasting. I am curious to know what people like about this book. Like, change my mind. Like, maybe the second book is better and there's more, I don't know, magic or something like that. Like, sell me on the second book, people. I'll read it. Just sell me on it. Speaking of that, if you've got any other book recommendations, let us know. Post on our Facebook, post on our Instagram, where our handle is @BadassLitPod. Yep. But that's all for this month. See you guys next time. I'm Michael. I'm Barbara. Bye. Bye-bye.